Well, I think it's important depending on how you do it, right? So my philosophy is that of responsible platforming, which is any decision I make about a guest is sort of an evaluation of a few different things. Number one, how prominent are they or their ideas? Number two, is it worth refuting ideas that are bad, or is it better to sort of let them leave them alone and let them potentially die out? And number three, am I going to be like well enough equipped and prepared to be the person refuting those bad ideas? And if the answer to any of those questions comes to the point where I don't think that there's actually an advantage for my worldview and my philosophy to interview someone, then I won't. So my main concern when I interview someone like Richard Spencer or whoever else is I want to be really well prepared for when I hear something that I don't agree with, when I hear something that I think is damaging for our society, the idea of separating people by race, the idea of getting people out on the basis of a religious belief or ethnicity or whatever, I want to make sure that I'm prepared to take those ideas, take them on head on in a way that I feel good about, because the last thing I would want to even be flirting with or dancing with doing is giving someone a platform merely to espouse bad ideas in a way that could actually grow support for those ideas, or it could accomplish the exact opposite of what I'm looking to do.
So, you only want to have just so I can be clear, because I think this sounds kind of similar to what Oprah did back in the day when she had the KKK on. You don't want to just give them if it's someone that you think like has a dangerous idea, you don't want to just give them a platform to just share their idea. You want to, I don't want to use the word challenge if that's not what you mean, but kind of.
I do want to challenge,
Yeah.
and I don't want it. So in my head, I'm thinking, let's say it's 20 years from now, and either the ideas of this guest have grown and have become mainstreamed, which would be horrible, or they've died away, and people 20 years from now may have significantly moved on from these ideas as sort of being dangerous. If I do an interview where I give someone a platform to talk about their racist views or homophobic views or whatever it is that I find objectionable in whatever way, what will I sort of have accomplished by leaving that interview as part of the historical record, right? The fact that these ideas existed, that's a pretty low bar for me. And I think most people in the West who have access to media know that these bad ideas exist. So I feel much better about the idea that if in 20 years someone looks back at my interview with Richard Spencer, no matter what's happened with the alt-right and with white nationalism, it will be clear that I challenged the ideas and that I believed that they were bad. And that's something I can actually feel good about, rather than saying, talk about white supremacy or whatever else it might be.
Do you get a lot of blowback when you do talk to these controversial figures, or do you get a good amount of acceptance, actually?
It's a mix from both the left and the right. There's people on the right that like the idea of me talking to some of these extreme right-wing figures because they like their ideas. That's a very different motivation than mine. There's people on the left who appreciate my attempts to expose these ideas and push back against them. And there are people on both sides, including on the left, which is sort of the side that I'm on, who say it's not good to platform these ideas. We're better off just ignoring them altogether. And I just disagree with that as a general principle. I think you really got to analyze it case by case. A good example is the Westboro Baptist Church, that's known for their God Hates Fags slogan. Very little media coverage. You really hear very little about them right now. So I've stopped interviewing them. I don't think that their views are noteworthy in any way, nor are they worth challenging anymore. 10 years ago, when they were regularly in the news for protesting the funerals of soldiers who had died and doing all sorts of other horrible things, they were getting enough media attention that was not directly challenging them. Gay marriage was not legal at the time, etc., where I made the calculation that this is worth refuting. That's changed, so they no longer appear on my program. So it's sort of something that evolves, and you really have to take it on a case-by-case basis.
How do you think that works for the state of discourse today? Because I think a lot of people agree with that approach, but I think also a lot of people are lowering their standards for what they consider to be acceptable topics to discuss. For example, like I wouldn't be surprised if, let's say, some people on the right would say talking to you might be too far.
I've never heard that before.
Oh, I haven't either. Okay, I pulled that out of nowhere. I haven't either.
So when you say lowering standards, do you mean making them more relaxed or tighter?
Or, I mean, what they consider to be dangerous ideas that shouldn't be shared. I feel like the bar for that is starting to get a little bit lower. I'm trying to think of an example, like maybe having on a guest to talk about why they, like, let's say like pro-life.
Okay.
Like some people would probably say that we shouldn't even have someone on, like someone who's pro-choice, that we shouldn't even have someone on to talk about the case for pro-life, the pro-life case.
Someone who's pro-life would say that there shouldn't be someone who's pro-choice on? I think I might not have understood the
Yeah, or I guess talking with people who don't agree with our sides, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there will always be people who want to suppress the speech of those that they disagree with for different reasons. It could be because they view the opposition as posing such a significant challenge that rather than engage, they want to just shut down the debate. And sometimes that can be a sign of the weakness of their argument. In other words, if you are on the side of so-called climate skepticism, I call it climate science
yeah, that's
denial.
a good example. Yeah.
You might want to do everything you can to silence the pro-science voices, what we call the consensus, what we call the reality-based approach, because you see that as a serious challenge to your climate denial views. In other words, you believe that in a fair sort of confrontation, a battle of ideas, so to speak, to use a cliche term, you believe that the pro-science side is going to come out on top. So rather than engage with them, you might try to prevent them from even having a voice. That would be sort of one reason why someone might try to do that. There's all sorts of other reasons why someone might try to do that. That's not my view. So my view tends to be, let's engage in these questions and discuss these issues up to the point at which earlier we talked about objectivity versus neutrality. At a certain point, reality has to influence sort of how the discourse is happening. I don't know where the line is, but as an example with climate change, when 99.98% of peer-reviewed science has a very strong consensus on what is going on with the climate, does it make sense for corporate media to have 50-50 balance between the science side and the science denying side when the consensus is 99.8? I don't know. So I think that there are real questions about that, but that's more about decisions that are being made at the individual media outlet level than sort of broader issues of suppressing and silencing voices, which maybe is more what you wanted to talk about there, which I'm glad to.
Sure, yeah. Just what are your general thoughts on that?
My view is, well, on my program, I sort of have laid it out, which is if the idea is prominent enough to either talk about or attempt to refute, and I think that I'm a good person to do that, then I'll do the interview. I get pitched stuff all the time that I turn down because it's not interesting to me, and ultimately the program is what is interesting to me. I don't think the ideas are prominent enough. They're very obscure, conspiracy theories, for example, that I don't think are worth refuting. Yeah. But my view is one where I want more speech as long as it's responsibly platformed.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for watching the episode. If you're interested in contributing to the conversation and supporting the show, there's 2 easy things you can do. 1, click subscribe, and 2, visit our Patreon page where you get exclusive access to the Exploring Minds community.